Welcome to Rocket Ship, the podcast where web developers learn the skills and secrets to ship awesome mobile apps. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Alex Moureaux, who has a lot of letters in his French name, but you only need to pronounce the O. Welcome, Alex.
That's an accurate description. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. So Alex is a mobile app developer at BAM Tech, but he is also the performance guy. So I found Alex talking about performance on, I think it was the last, app.js, right?
App.js, probably, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the app.js. Talking about performance and also sharing a lot of tips on Twitter. You created a tool called flashlight.dev, which is kind of like Lighthouse for React Native applications, as far as I understand. So today's episode will be all about building performant React Native applications, and I hope you can clarify a few things about that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Before we get into performance things, I would just love to know how you actually personally got in touch with React Native. When did you join the train, and what are you doing in your current job?
Right. So I joined my the current company I'm working at, BAM, in 2015. So that's a bit more than 8 years to nowadays.
That's very loyal in today's world.
Yeah, definitely. But I still love everything we're doing. I love the company, and we've grown a lot. So, and at the time, actually, we were doing Ionic in 2015. The company got founded in 2014, and the co-founders, Marek and Baptiste, were really thinking, we don't want to have one code for each platform, so we should really do cross-platform. And so that's how they got to Ionic. And at some point we had we started to look in a lot of other cross-platform technologies at the time to see like what else could we try, like Xamarin, Titanium, a lot of those. And at some point React Native came around, and it got really interesting because, well, you had this promise of having JavaScript code and web developer tools, but at the same time you get the benefit of having native components, native UX, etc., look and feel. And pretty much October 2015 Android version came out, because originally it was only iOS the first few months. We had a project which required performance because they had a lot of animations and stuff like this, and we thought, let's go. I think maybe, the company at the time was really small. That was a really bold move, I think, at the time. Maybe we would not do a move like that today because we're a bit more... but yeah, at the time it was like, let's go. Let's try it out. Let's do a project with it. And that was October 2015. And we got, I think in the beginning it was pretty hard. A lot of things were missing. We added a few libraries for Android. We have an image resizing library
that you created in-house.
GitHub. Yep. And then slowly all of our projects starting to migrate towards React Native because we realized that it was really a good bet. And nowadays we don't only do React Native, but a lot of our projects are React Native, and we definitely really love the technology. And I mean, over the past years, so many things have watched all the talks from App.js about new React Native and Expo stuff, and it's amazing what's happening.
Yeah, the development of Expo and of Expo, but in general about React Native is pretty astonishing. It's not even version 1 yet, so I don't know if it will be.
Yeah, that is true. I don't know if we believe that there's going to be a version 1.
I also don't know. Yeah, it's funny that you've been using Ionic. So yeah, I've been an Ionic advocate for the last like 7-8 years. I started with it in 2014 as well, and grown with it a lot. I run the Ionic Academy, which is an online school completely for Ionic. So I'm just curious. Did you do like a comparison of Ionic and React Native, or did you simply accept the premise that React Native will be faster because it renders to native views?
At the time, I think that was just basically, yeah. I mean, 2015 basically was just like look and feel. It was just feeling and not really like accurately measuring. I think phones were also quite, not as good as they are today in 2015, 2016. So the difference was palpable. But I mean, a lot of things were also missing in React Native, like proper navigation solutions and everything at the time. So it was not perfect either, but it was nice to be able to give this impression of like having native bars and native components and just native UI.
Right.
Nowadays, I haven't used Capacitor. I've never actually used Capacitor and haven't looked into it. I know that one of the biggest advantages nowadays is that React Native has Hermes, for example, which even if you have a massive JavaScript bundle in your app, Hermes will still make sure that your app loads as fast. While if you're using web solution, I mean, I'm guessing, I actually haven't tried it, but on the web, if you have a massive JavaScript bundle file, it's going to take a while to load, and it's going to be slower. So you have to deal with bundle splitting and everything.
Right, yeah. You're getting into lazy loading, bundles and routes, and then that stuff. It introduces other problems.
Yep.
Yeah. True. I mean, Capacitor is the great solution. It's not like one is completely better than the other. People like to say, "Oh, what's the best cross-platform technology?" And then they also say, "And what about Flutter? It's the coolest thing lately." But I mean, they all have advantages and disadvantages. Some people say Flutter apps totally don't feel native. I mean, they are also not really, because they have like the Skya rendering layer where they just draw everything. Then other people call these web applications out because they always feel like web apps. I mean, I've used tons of Ionic apps with Capacitor, and many of them feel okay. Like you don't really notice it. And if you can truly have one code base, that's also a nice argument. Like if you need a website and an app and you have a team of 2 people, then maybe Capacitor is the best solution in that case. But we want to get back into React Native today and why you are so obsessed with performance. I feel like whenever I look up your name, I see something somehow related to performance. Was there like a reason for that, or did you just like evolve into that role?
This is pretty much the only thing I talk about nowadays. That is true. What's the reason for it? That's a good question. I was the tech lead of a big project for a lot of time between like 2017 and 2021. Really massive React Native app, and of course we got all this issues. I mean, we got a lot of performance issues, of course. Like first, it was pre-Hermes years, so we had to investigate like how to, our app was taking I think 12 seconds at some point to load on a low-end Android device. High-end devices was fine, but when Hermes came along, we went down from 12 to 4. I was almost crying. It was so simple, like activate Hermes, and then I thought there was a bug.
Yeah, I
Why
can
is
imagine.
it so fast?
It can't be true.
It was impressive. I mean, of course, like I feel like the bigger your app is, the most likely you are to have performance issues to deal with. And my gripes at the time was that, I don't know, sometimes I was like, I think the first thing I did was like put console log render and make sure that I rendered less things. But then I was like, that's not scientific at all. Like, okay, maybe I'm happy because I'm doing less rendering, but of course, like that's no proof at all that I'm actually improving performance. Of course, I discovered React DevTools, which was a pretty awesome discovery. And then what happened was that at some point we wanted to improve the performance of one of our screens, specifically the scrolling performance. And I wanted to have a clear indicator that our performance was, that we were improving performance. Like,
right.
If we do an action, sure, like it looks like in React DevTools it's going to be better, but I want to see it. I want to see something. I want to see graphs. I want to see stats. And since I had been doing a bit of web development before, lots of full stack development, I knew that there was, a lot of tools out there. I love the promise of Lighthouse because it's not perfect, sure, but what I really like is that you go to any website, even websites you don't own. You can go to. I always joke that I go to google.com and get the Lighthouse score from google.com, and it's not even perfect, I think. But any website you want, it will give you a score very quickly, and that gives you a cool idea of where you stand. And so got the idea of graphing the performance monitor with JS FPS and UI FPS to be able to like sit in a graph and just whip up add a score so that it would be more visible. And then afterwards, after leaving that project, I wanted to move to something else. Had a chat with my manager, he's the CTO of the company basically, and I realized that what really interests me is coding, is like diving deep into subjects and having fun with it, I guess. And performance is, I feel like not a lot of, like, people should talk more about performance. I think a lot of projects, it's like security. It's one of those subjects where you live it to, you develop features, and then, maybe we should check performance or security or whatever, and you end up having a lot of issues, which would have been, much easier to fix during development. And that got me really interested in the subject, because technically it's super interesting. And I think more people should take a look into it. Also, I believe that, we should strive to build fast apps that work on any device. I think also in terms of, I really enjoyed the concept of green IT and making sure that, what we build have a nice impact on the environment. And we know that environmentally, what is really bad for the environment is building the phones. And mostly, I think the stat from the study in Canada was 80% of phone CO2 emissions are from its fabrication. So what can we do as developers? I mean, there's the whole thing about OS compatibility, of course. But if we build fast apps, I believe that at least users will be less inclined to change phones if they still have apps that are working fast and that are working well.
That's so cool. I never thought about this arc between performance and performant apps and like environmental aspects and phone usages, but of course it totally makes sense. Like the more or the longer we can use phones, the less phones we need to produce, or maybe even the less we destroy the battery of the phone, so we can use the device for a longer time. Yeah, that's totally interesting. And I feel what you said before is true, that not a lot of people are talking about performance. And I think it's the same what Alexandre Moureaux said before about animations. Not a lot of people are talking about animations, and people usually develop the whole project, and then in the end, we got a week. Let's add some animations now. It's probably the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point about animation. We're starting to talk about. So we have also a team of designers at BAM, and they really love the concept of not building MVP, but MLP, minimum lovable products. Yeah, I actually never thought about animation in the same way as performance actually for this. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think the MLP concept is definitely something you need to embrace for mobile apps. So for a while on the web, all these indie hackers and MVP projects, you can just have like a few buttons and stuff up and it works. But for mobile apps, I can't remember when I used an MVP of an application. Like the app should always look good. Like I will not use your app if it looks like Windows 98 and has like ugly buttons and something.
Yeah, definitely.
And if the app starts 10 seconds, I have it uninstalled before I've even seen the first screen.
Yep.
So
I think performance is definitely a huge part of that. I always joke. I mean, no, actually, it's not really a joke, but because sometimes people tell me, my users actually have high-end phones, so it's fine. Like, for example, I'm 60% iOS and 40% Android, so it's kind of okay to have worse performance. It's not my biggest issue. And I like to call that, it's not true in every cases, but I like to call that survival bias. This history of survival bias, I think it begins with the World War II or something, where you got war airplanes flying and coming back, and they saw all the bullet marks on the airplanes, and they thought, we should reinforce those parts to make them more solid, because this is, where we get bullet marks. But actually what they didn't realize is those are the planes that survived. Those are not the planes that got shot down. So in the same manner, what I'm saying is that sometimes, you think your users are the users with high-end phones, but because those are the users that survived. The users with, crappy low-end Android phones, they just uninstall the app because it doesn't work very well. And I've seen that happen on a few clients' projects, actually, where, they didn't actually realize that the performance on low-end Android phone was just, really unbearable, so they had less users.
Yeah, I can totally see that point, and it definitely makes sense in this scenario as well. Okay, the thought I just had was I want to get more into the details of performance measuring and what we can do better in our application, because you are the expert and we have you here. But I want to start with one other simple question in that direction. It's a more general question. So from your point of perspective, does React Native make it hard or easy for beginners to get good performance in applications? Like if I just start developing apps, I'm probably a beginner, I'm not yet an expert level React Native developer. Do I tend to get good performance out of the box or shitty performance?
That's a good question. I need to answer that correctly. I basically have two opinions about this. I think one is about React Native, and one would be more about React. So what I like about React Native is out of the box, you develop your app, you have native component. If you use the proper tools like Reanimated, React Navigation with React Native screens and everything, which are I think kind of standard at this point, you get good performance out of the box, and you can easily whip up some products which are pretty nice. What can be tricky is, I think, React, and we talked about this at last conference in London, React Advanced, that was last week, and the presented React Forget that I'm gonna talk about in a minute. But I think React is really punishes you if you make bad code architecture decisions in your app. I think it works really well if you follow a good architecture principle, like single responsibility principle. You put the code where it's needed to be, etc. But I've seen clients come to me for performance audits where you, for example, have huge hooks at the root of the app or screens, custom hooks, which are doing so much stuff and exporting an object with, I don't know, 20 different parameters. You have something with so much responsibility, and React just kills you for it, basically. Because, of course, you have use states here and there, so that means that every time something is going to happen, you're going to re-render the whole thing, and it's going to be pretty bad. So yeah, I think if you have a huge app, you really need to follow good principles and really think about this, because otherwise you're going to get bitten. I think it's going to be a bit less true with React Forget. React Forget is this compiler. I mean, basically it's recognizing that use memo, use callback, and everything is just kind of a pain.
It is.
In the framework, and they say it like that. Like, it's not good DevX. It's sacrificing good DevX for good performance and good UX, because you have to think about like, do I need to memoize? And if I'm memoizing, am I memoizing it correctly? And if I am memoizing it correctly, how long will it stay memoized correctly? It's just a matter of messing it up at some point and forgetting to memoize the callback or something, and you don't realize it, but then your app has worse performance. And with React Forget, they really want to take this out of the equation, and they're building a compiler so that you can write React code, beautiful React code, without thinking about memoization, and this will do it for you and compile it. I mean, transpile it, maybe, I don't know, to actual React code that does all the memoization for you. And it's still soon TM to be released, as we say, but apparently it's used in the Oculus Quest store, in production, and also on Instagram.com. They've mentioned that they achieved really terrific results, showing like, go to React DevTools and you see that automatically just memoize the stuff that you want memoized, and probably even better than if you do it yourself. So let's hope.
That sounds pretty awesome. I think Mark Rosavi told me about React Forget the first time, like last week or something. And then I looked it up, and it was still like somehow vague in a talk from last year, but it looks like it's been making progress, and it's actually becoming a reality, which is very great, because I'm kind of still a beginner in React, I'd say. And I use memo and use callback, but I still basically struggle with, like, why is it called memoize and not memorize? Like, why is there no R in that word? Shouldn't it be like memorize? Doesn't it like keep things in memory? Why is it memoize? Do you know?
That's a good question. I mean, memo is not something from React. It's something that existed for. It's a computer term, basically, for remembering the result of a function.
But why does it?
It could be. Yeah, I don't actually know. I wonder.
Maybe memory was already taken for like real actual memory, and they just needed a different word. I honestly don't know.
According to Wikipedia, the term memoization was coined in 1968 and is derived from the Latin memorandum, which means to be remembered. All right. Learn something new.
Well, we just gotta have to accept that.
But basically, it's the same root as memorization. So I have no idea why the guy who coined it called it that.
Well, so until we got React Forget and an improvement of our React performance, what are the steps we can currently take? So you said some clients come to you and they want to have a performance audit. Let's say I want a performance audit of one of my apps. I maybe can't pay your company, so I want to do it myself. Where can I actually start with a performance audit? Like, how would I approach it as a person or as like a small company?
I think the simplest first thing to do is basically get yourself a low-end Android device on Bug Market or something, and just try your app there. I had one of the clients, basically the first time I tried their apps, the app was really unbearably slow on low-end device, and they basically bought a low-end device for all of the company. I came back 6 months later, I think, and everyone was like with the low-end device testing their stuff. But what was really awesome is that, I mean, when you have to spend your time with that low-end device, which is, what a lot of users actually have, you realize what needs to be done to improve the app. And just with that, I think they were able to improve, or at least just realize how much they needed to improve performance. So I think that would be...
Does that mean that basically with iOS devices, you usually don't see those performance issues as easily as with low-end Android devices?
So I wrote... I do tend to care more about Android. I wrote a blog article a while back where we cross-referenced analytics data from our the apps with the biggest amount of users that we had, cross-reference device model from analytics data with benchmarks of what those devices were performing on a website called Geekbench. Essentially, what I wanted to know is like, okay, what's the average performance of the users of my app? And what I realized was that first, it was mostly like France and Europe markets. You have a lot of people with really low-end devices with very old CPU, maybe 8 cores, so maybe like 8 CPUs, but they're really bad, so it doesn't really help that much. But the second thing I realized is that iOS has really, really fast devices. Well, first because they're expensive, so of course, they get to be fast. But secondly, I think even on the same kind of pricing, like the iPhones that come out every year are really, really good, like on single CPU core. So for example, executing stuff on the JS thread, they're going to be really good at it, really fast at it. So you tend to see, usually you tend to see fewer performance issues on iOS, and if you tend to see them, it's probably worse on Android.
I can assume. So I'm using now a low-end device, and my screen is loading slowly on a low-end Android device. What are the next steps I need to take?
Yeah, so the next step, I think, is being able to set up, when we're developers, we like to have indicators, like health indicators for a project. So, for example, crash rate, we're going to take a look at crash rate in Crashlytics or Sentry, and we want this number to be above something. Testing, maybe we're going to check, test coverage or whatever, some other metrics, etc. I think performance should definitely be the same and should have you should be able to visualize clearly what's your performance and how it improves or regresses over time. This is, of course, I'm going to talk about Flashlight here because that's, one of the goals, which I hope is at least partially attained, is to be able to have easy to have measure of performance. But it could be, some other things you can use.
What is usually used to measure FPS or RAM memory usage for React Native?
I would say Flashlight.
Of course. What did people use before Flashlight existed?
So, for example, if it's just app startup time, I think there's React Native Performance, which is a library by Joel Artvissen, Oblador on GitHub. I forget if it's actually included in the React Native core now. But basically, if you
it is definitely in their docs.
If you install that in your app, it gives you startup time of your app. So that can give you, it's already a good metric, like startup time. This is something that you can definitely use. CallStack has a really nice library called Reassure, which is basically if you have tests with testing libraries, Reassure can use a similar kind of test. I mean, basically what they do is they measure the time to render your components, your React components. And you can set up an actual proper CI for it. For example, I have this home screen and it renders in, say, 200 milliseconds. And then at some points, bad things happen. I mess up memoization somewhere and it re-renders 8 times. Then Reassure is going to be able to tell me, oh, nope, something bad happened.
Like basically like end-to-end snapshot images and comparing like images, but so this time comparing numbers of render times.
It's not even end-to-end, which is what is really nice, is that it's quite fast because it renders only on the JavaScript side. So it's kind of like testing library for testing. It's not really end-to-end, but it gives you this nice API, which makes it really fast to work with. So here it just takes care of the JS side of things, but already that gives you a lot of information and that gives it to you fast. Flashlight would be kind of end-to-end Reassure, actually, in a way. Because Flashlight will be kind of slow, but it will run on a real device and give you basically everything, like JS, native, the bridge, FPS, RAM, etc.
So I think this sums up pretty well why so few people are talking about performance or getting into it, because you as an expert already have problems like saying which tools we can use, and it's really not that easy to get started, to actually like measure the stuff or understand what you need to measure. So there is like a barrier of entrance, which I also feel is the same for animations, which I just posted something about interpolation yesterday and I still completely I don't get it exactly, but anyway. So Flashlight definitely looks to me like it's making things easier. If I go to flashlight.dev, link also in the show notes, it really looks like I just drop my APK in here, Flashlight runs some magic, and then I get a nice performance review, just like I would get with Lighthouse. How does Flashlight work? Like, how can I use it? So both, how can I use it? Like, do I just have to drag in something? And also, what is it actually doing behind the scenes? Like some magic or?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Essentially, Flashlight is, at its core, Flashlight is a profiler. Just like you would see in Android Studio profiler for native or even React Native developers. It reads into the data of the phone to be able to extract CPU usage, RAM, FPS, and everything. And from that, basically, it gives you an aggregate score to give you an idea of performance. Because there are so many metrics. The point is you decrease FPS, but maybe you increase CPU. Do you know if it's really better or not? It's kind of hard to deal with. So the point is to abstract that away a little bit. And then if you want to play with nerdy stats on CPU thread tables or anything, you can also do it as well. But essentially, it's a profiler. Since Android is based on Linux, Linux is really nice because, for example, if you're on Mac OS or on Linux, you can do in your terminal, you can enter top, T-O-P, and this will give you the same thing as the activity manager would tell you. It would be listing all the processes on your OS currently running. For example, at the moment, I'm pretty sure that we would see Google Chrome running with a bit of CPU usage because of camera processing and everything. And you can do that as well on Android, which is pretty cool. Like you could do ADB shell to run the same command on Android on your phone. And if you do ADB shell top, you get the same thing, but for your Android phone. And right. Flashlight is loosely based on this concept that you can actually, hack into the phone, extract all the data that you want. Also, worth noting that we actually measured the performance of measuring performance. Because you could have like a tool measuring performance, but actually being so bad that it actually has a huge impact on the phone. So Flashlight was also built so that it has a very, very low impact on the phone. And so the easiest way to use it would be you just plug in your phone, you download the Flashlight CLI, and you go with Flashlight Measure. And with Flashlight Measure, you get the web app where you're able to start and stop measuring. And so, for example, you could, say you want to improve scrolling performance in your app. You start measuring, you scroll, you stop. Then you do a change, you reload, you start and stop, and Flashlight is able to give you the comparison view as well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Where it goes a bit beyond that is that performance is really hard, because this is what I like about it as well. Not only you have all those metrics that you need to deal with, you also have to deal with the fact that it's not deterministic, right? You measure startup time, and at some point maybe your app is going to start in 3.9 seconds, and the next time it's going to start in 3.8 seconds. How do you know that you actually improved performance? You could be I gained 0.1 seconds, but probably you did not. Probably it's just a bit of randomness. So Flashlight also has this ability to just write a script. It could be simple script or end-to-end test script, and Flashlight will repeat it a few times, take measures, performance measures, and aggregate and average the measures so that you're able to have a bit more deterministic measures.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's the whole concept of, my dream was really, and it still is actually, to have a tool like Lighthouse, upload your app, you just give it your app, and it just tells you, oh, this is good, this is not good, you have an issue here, here, and here. And so combining this end-to-end test, the command is Flashlight test, basically, that runs several iterations, with a real device in the cloud. And this is how you get flashlight.dev, which allows you to basically upload your app, and Flashlight will just do this, repeat a single test over and over, and then give you performance metrics automatically.
How does it work? So if I upload an APK to flashlight.dev, you basically, Alex deploys it to his low-end Android device and then gives me the measure? Or
exactly.
Where do you run my app?
We're using AWS Device Farm because mainly it's the only... So there's a bunch of, I don't know if you call that, like, I would say device farms, but then AWS Device Farm is called Device Farm. Well, anyway, but there's a bunch of those services which allows you to have a device in the cloud, like Browser Stack, Sauce Labs, and then you have also AWS Device Farm. What's really nice about AWS Device Farm is that it allows you to do anything you want on the phone, namely run ADB command where we go deep into the files of the phones and everything, which to my knowledge, Browser Stack, for example, does not allow you to do. So this is why we use it. Basically, your APK gets deployed to AWS, and then we run the test against the device farm real device directly.
This is really really cool. I mean, the technology behind it is, not easy, but pretty easy. I've used ADB shell as well to connect to my Android devices, and I don't know, open like a deep link URL directly or something, or extract some data. But yeah, of course, running the top command and performing this and giving me a nice score is even better. I mean, if I check with Lighthouse, I actually don't know how it works, but it browses random pages of my website to give me a performance. Is that somehow possible for my React Native application as well? Like, could you somehow extract the routes or some kind of information without me telling you, okay, I have the route /home/about/something? So you could like check 3-5 pages automatically, or is that like totally beyond what's possible?
I mean, I think it's 2023. It feels like everything is possible nowadays. This is the major thing we're actually exploring right now, because my ideal setup for Flashlight would really be anyone just upload their app and it just explores it automatically and is able to just let you know, oh, this is an issue, you have an issue when you click on that button or something like that, which would be great because then you have this before even deploying to production. It would be nice to automatically detect that. Yeah, essentially all the features that we want to do is this iOS support, which should hopefully be coming, adding also a bit data on stats, like standard deviation and etc. Like some just to bring to add a little bit more maths into it, I guess, and also some other metrics like network usage and stuff like this. But so for automatic exploration, we have a few ideas. One of those actually is using AI. There's a company called Mobile Boost, for example, who just released it's invite only in beta, I think, but they released a AI end-to-end test driver. So essentially you have your app, you give a prompt like, hey, connect to this app with those credentials and add 3 things to your basket or something like that, and it will automatically do it in your app.
It should be possible with AI,
which is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's one of the paths we're exploring at the moment. Hopefully we'll have some stuff to share, not 2023 I think, but maybe early 2024 or soon.
Yeah, I think that's exciting, and with AI, I feel the same. Everything should be possible, and I also kind of feel like this is a great tool, and you have some future ideas to develop it. And if you really can, like, add this AI stuff or make it really easy to just drop stuff and then make a check, I mean, I feel like this could be a great business. So I guess you're working at it at BAM, because I think the package was something with at BAM.
Yep. Yeah, the the repository is github/bamlab, BAMLAB/flashlight. Yeah.
I will definitely put this in the show notes. Great tool. I think I'm actually going to do a video on this, maybe showing some other performance measuring, and then also Flashlight as an alternative, which is really easy. And then, of course, showing... I mean, it would be also great to not only show me the numbers, but also show me how to make it better and how to actually fix my performance problems. So,
yep, definitely.
I don't know, if you say like you have FPS 30, maybe I don't know what this means, or how I could improve that.
Yeah, this is one of the top features that are requested. To be honest, at the moment, we're also kind of... I mean, it's not like necessarily top of priority for us, because we're like, well, you could also contact us. But essentially, I mean, we should put a bit this more in the documentation, but Flashlight at the moment is more for like measuring, and then analyzing will be, to be left for, like, for example, you have a JavaScript issue. Flashlight will tell you, oh, the issue is on the JS thread, and so that's going to be up to you to go to the React to check React DevTools, for example, or get a trace, JavaScript trace to do that. And there's some good tutorials. I've given also a talk on React Native EU on how to do that. I should add a blog article at some point if I have the time. But yeah, FPS would be like checking with Android Studio or something. But
I think this sounds really interesting for the future, and I'm looking forward to what's coming next to Flashlight. I want to talk about 2 more questions today, which are kind of practical, so we can end this episode on some practical help. So the first question is, probably you've heard this before, but to me, as still somewhat of a new person to React Native, what is the best list component I should use?
Yeah, I think I've talked so much about this that some people are actually thinking that I'm affiliated with Shopify. But of course, yeah, I gave a talk at App.js 2022 about optimizing the performance of my list. And essentially, I feel like this talk could also have been entitled, probably you should use Flash List. And that would probably have killed my talk. I don't know. But yeah, Flat List comes with some issues that, I mean, it's just mostly purely JS based. Some default also that can be surprising. For example, by default, you're going to be rendering if you start your app with a flat list, you're gonna render 11 screen of data, meaning you have like it's what we call virtualization window. It's not just gonna render your screen; it's gonna also render some other screens of data, just to make sure that when you scroll, you don't have blank screens. The annoying thing is that at its most, the default is, I think, the prop is window size is 21 by default. So you can reach 21 screens worth of components rendered in your app, which is huge.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So you need to really make sure that you're doing extensive memoization and everything, which can, be kind of tricky. If you know about native components, if you don't use Compose, actually you have, the oldest Android component for building lists is called Recycler View. And so a while back, there was this component called React Native Recycler View, which was based on the same concept of recycling elements. So instead of every time you scroll and this guy gets unmounted and I mount a new guy, recycling is, I take this element that disappears, I put it here, and I change the prop. Which adds a little bit of complexity, because you have to ensure that your components are able to deal with that, not being unmounted and remounted. But it saves up a lot on JavaScript thread usage. And so Flashlist was this solution by Shopify which took it a bit further, and they were able to improve the performance, and also align the API with Flatlist, so that it's almost as easy as changing one letter, switching the T to SH, Flatlist to Flashlist, and all in all, you gain a much better performance at the end of it.
So I, as a bloody beginner, I should never use just a scroll view and map my items and create components from them, right?
It really depends. I think if you have, if it's just a small screen with not that many elements, and you know that you're never gonna have more elements than I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. It's just, to make it scrollable. Scroll view is probably fine. But I think, in most cases, it's not that hard or tricky to use a flash list or a virtualized list. But I would advertise for using flash list. There's still, I don't know if Mark Usavi talked about wishlist.
Yeah, he said he wants to make an announcement soon. I think they were working on it, but it came with some drawbacks. Like I think he said he couldn't solve some of the problems, and if Mark can't solve them, then I guess nobody can.
That is a good point. Maybe the whole community puts themselves to it. Maybe
some AI.
We can try,
but it is. I mean, I've used FlashList as well. The only drawback for me was that it wasn't working with Expo Go, so I heavily used Expo, and then I had to do like a pre-build. But that was the only downside. Besides that, as you said, it has the same API as FlatList. So that means is there like no case when I should use FlatList? Like, should I always just default for FlashList, or if I have like 10 items, then use a scroll view, or like can we get rid of FlatList?
Yeah, I think defaulting to FlashList is. I don't think there is a case where FlatList would be better. We did note at some point that there was an issue, but I think was fixed with right to left, and also the web support. But I mean, on the web support, you also have some other solutions on the web so that you could replace it with. Other than that, I see really. Yeah, you should always use FlashList. Scroll view, maybe you just need to make sure that you're not in a case where the rookie thing to do is like, oh, I implement a scroll view and it works nice, but then my API suddenly returns way more items than I expected, and maybe I should have virtualized all that. I've probably done this at the beginning of my career, but
okay, so I think that answers the list question. And my second question to wrap this up is, you as an expert, you have analyzed quite a few apps, I guess, and the performance of those apps. Are there some simple common steps you identified that many people get wrong in their apps, like simple advice for people how they can speed up their apps? I mean, maybe with React for Get soon, like adding that to our app, but beyond that, anything related to both React or React Native that are like easy wins?
Yeah. First thing, well, I mean, everyone at this point should be, but maybe if there are still some people who are not using this, everyone should be on Hermes, especially on Android. I think on low-end Android devices, if your app is big, it's just unusable on low-end Android device. So switching to Hermes can be it's easy because it's only one boolean to change, but then you also can get regressions because Hermes is a totally different JS engine, and some stuff might not work as they used to with the other JS engine. But I think it's really definitely worth the time to invest in testing out your app and making sure that it doesn't break. Like I was saying, for us, it was 12 seconds startup time to 4 seconds startup time just by enabling it. So enabling Hermes, making sure if your app is old that it's there, definitely the number one thing to do. I think second thing would be, using flash lists instead of flat list everywhere. That's as easy as you could almost write a ESLint rule for it, actually. Third thing would be using React navigation with React Native screens and making sure that you're using the native stack navigator as much as possible, because then you get native animations and so it's the best look and feel, and performance wise. Like I always joked that I was able to recognize React navigation app with a JS navigator because the swipe back was not as like native feeling on iOS than on with the native stack. So React navigation with React Native screens, make sure you use native stack navigator. Then simple tips. I would say take care of images. If you have images in your apps, for example, from a backend service, I mean that's true for any app, React Native, Flutter, any technology, to be honest, even web. you need to make sure that you have the proper resolution and the proper disk size for the image that you're using. For example, if you're displaying your image in the 200 by 200 square, you don't want to have a resolution of 3000 by 3000 because you're going to blow up the memory on your app. You laugh, but that does happen.
Yeah, I feel like I've done that before as well because I didn't care about it.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in the format of my images? Like on the web project, I often use WebP. Does it make a difference which format the image has if it's bundled within the assets of my React Native app, or is JPEG, PNG? Is it?
Yeah, WebP is pretty good because disk size, it's just much better. I mean, it's really great out of the box in terms of disk size. It's always going to be the smallest images. The default support for WebP is, so on Android, I think you can basically use WebP as much as you want. On iOS, I forget, I think it's iOS 14. Should check that, I might be wrong.
The good thing about iOS is that people are usually on the last 2 or 3 versions and not anything.
Yeah, that's true. But if you have an app that is like widely used and that, I know a few apps who need to support from iOS 12 or iOS 11 because they still have like 3% of users. But when you have 10 million of users, 3% of 10 million is actually massive. So they cannot afford to not use that. But Expo Image actually uses SD Web Image on iOS under the hood, and they allow you to use WebP for any devices. So you can, if you want WebP, you can actually use Expo Image.
Nice. I didn't know. Once again, I learned up something new. Yeah, Expo Image, great. Another good component to check out. Thank you so much. I think those are already some practical steps and tips. By the way, I just want to add, if you don't want to use React Navigation, of course, you can also use the Expo router, which I'm a big fan of the file-based routing, because it's still React Navigation under the hood, and it also uses the native stack or tabs or whatever interface you're using. So, Alex, thank you so much for all the information. I really enjoyed this. I was looking forward to getting more into performance. I definitely want to check out more of Flashlight, so I will put this in the show notes again. Just to wrap it up, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
I think on Twitter, I guess, or x.com, I think, is what people call it now.
I still have Twitter in the URL.
No, I think most people call it Twitter. Actually, at React Advanced last week, they had a poll of, do you tweet or do you post on X? 90% of people said that they were still tweeting. I think the biggest surprise was that 10% of people were actually using X.
Yeah, I agree.
Twitter is the best way. My direct messages are open when I get the notifications to read them. If I don't reply to the messages, it's probably that I didn't see them. So you can actually post a tweet mentioning me or something. I should reply, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely everyone follow Alex on Twitter. He has more hair on Twitter, at least a tiny bit more. So it's still him. But he also posts regularly about about performance. So I really enjoyed your little tweet threads. I kind of hate tweet threads usually, but yours are actually informative. And
I'm glad to hear that.
Not just clickbait. I should
definitely change my profile picture. I've been told. It's getting old.
No problem. If you want to learn more about me, of course, check out galaxies.dev. We have tons of courses for learning React Native in the best and fastest possible way. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified about the upcoming episodes with great people just like Alex. So thank you, Alex, again for taking the time. And I hope we're going to see a lot about Flashlight in the future.
Thank you, Simon. It was a pleasure. Thanks for hosting this.
Awesome. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.